I'm totally willing to close the border, but Mexico, of the last 4 days, has done more than they've ever done. They're apprehending people now by the thousands and bringing them back to their countries.
If they continue that, everything will be fine. If they don't, we're going to tariff their cars at 25% coming into the United States.
Let's bring in our panel now. Byron York, he's the chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner. Molly Hemingway, the senior editor at The Federalist, and Charles Lane, opinion writer for the Washington Post and author of the new book, Freedom's Detective, which comes out on Tuesday. So the president, and we talked about this yesterday on the panel, taking a little bit different tack, saying not going to close the border right away. Mexico's been doing some good things. If it continues to do those good things, we're good for a year, and if not, then I'm going to impose tariffs on cars. Is this a strategy, Byron, that'll work?
He is trying to get some sort of traction on this. I mean, there is an actual, real, genuine emergency on the border. The Border Patrol apprehended 100,000 people trying to cross illegally in the month of March. That gets to about 1 million a year, which gets you back to the bad old days of the mid-2000s. But Democrats are still calling it a fake emergency, and the things that he needs to do, like changing our asylum situation and dealing with this large number of people coming over, not trying to avoid detection, but just turning themselves over to the Border Patrol, he can't get anything done right now, which is one of the reasons he was promoting the sections of barrier that they actually have built, quite a few miles of that.
The president says, Mullet, that he's getting Mexico to act through the threats that he has been issuing about closing the border in the last few days. But will Congress ever act on this?
Well, that's what I think is interesting. People are very much focused on what the president is saying and what the president is threatening. But they also get upset when he acts unilaterally and doesn't have the support of Congress. We really do have a crisis. Congress did not want to address it seriously this year during the shutdown. They haven't wanted to address it seriously for the past several decades. This is not just a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. This is a bipartisan failure that goes back decades. So it sounds like Donald Trump is saying a bunch of crazy stuff, shutting down the border, tariffs and whatnot. What a lot of people think is crazy is that nobody's actually doing anything to address the problem because the situation is fine. I mean, open borders policy is largely fine for a lot of the people who are elite, and so they don't feel the incentive to do anything. So I think a lot of these threats are about incentivizing people to finally make changes that they've been reluctant to do for decades.
There's one part of this that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, and that is the president threatening tariffs against Mexico, because there is a side letter in the recently signed USMCA, which hasn't been ratified just yet, that says that the United States cannot impose tariffs on automobiles from Mexico or Canada up to the first 2.6 million under Section 232 national security, which I imagine this would be. But the president says that he's going to throw all of that out the window. Listen here.
This will supersede USMCA. USMCA is a great deal, and it's very good for Mexico, but this will supersede USMCA.
So, Charles, if you've got that side letter that says no tariffs on cars from Mexico, regardless of the circumstances, is he undercutting his whole trade deal that he's been touting?
Great question, John. Of course, the trade deal has not yet been approved by Congress, and last time I checked, and I checked relatively regularly, it's not making great progress through Congress. Like many other things, including immigration policy itself, it is held hostage to total bipartisan or partisan deadlock on the Hill. And to pick up on what Byron and Molly have been saying about Congress, you know, it's not just that they can't come to an agreement, it's not just that they have differences. Those differences are widening. The partisan differences are widening through this crisis, such that now Julian Castro, who is one of the candidates for the Democratic nomination, has just come out with his immigration plan, which is a very anti-enforcement plan, which he is sort of planting the flag around that, and that is becoming the new kind of position on the Democratic Party. So you're going to have, like, over here the Republican position is build a wall, and over here the Democratic position is not exactly abolish ICE, but soften ICE, and it becomes harder and harder to see how we're going to get to that bipartisan compromise, which everybody at least used to think is what we needed.
It's been an intractable problem for decades and continues to be. Let me switch gears here, because we got a new development on the Ways and Means Committee petitioning the IRS for 6 years of the president's tax returns. In a letter from William Consovoy, who's the president's latest addition to his outside legal team, to the Treasury Department addressing Section 6103 of the IRS tax code, William Consovoy writes, quote, "While that section allows Ways and Means to obtain tax returns and return information under certain conclusions, the committee's authority is subject to important constraints. These constraints extend to the ordinary taxpayer and the president alike." He goes on to say his request is a transparent effort by one political party to harass an official from the other party because they dislike his politics and speech. What's going to happen here, Byron? Will Ways and Means get these tax returns?
Well, it's going to go to the courts. I think the first thing you need to say is this is actually a fishing expedition. That's the fact below all this. The question the courts are going to have to decide is whether the Democrats have to say they have a legitimate legislative purpose in getting these tax returns, which is why when you saw the letter from Richard Neal to the IRS, he talked about reforming and streamlining and improving the audit process. So they need to see the president's tax returns to make their audit process better. Now, will courts buy that? I don't know, but it's going to be settled by judges.
How do you predict this will go, Molly?
Well, there's a legal battle, but there's also a political battle. And I think that you saw the president reframe some of these fishing expeditions as presidential harassment. There's a general view that maybe going for impeachment would not help Democrats against the president. He's sort of bucketing it all together, whether they go for impeachment or not. Just this level of presidential harassment, he's trying to say this is unfitting for him to have to deal with. They could do a lot, and I generally think Congress has the right to go for what it wants to go for, and that if people don't like it, they can take it out at the ballot box. But they need to make a better case for why they're going for this, and they haven't even tried.
The crisis is a direct result of the obstruction by Democrats in Congress, and we have to do something about it. It's a colossal surge, and it's overwhelming our immigration system, and I'm totally willing to close the border.
Tonight, the President of the United States calling attention to an immigration crisis, the likes of which the Homeland Security Secretary equates to a Cat 5 hurricane. That's how significant it is considered. Border Patrol apprehending more than 100,000 illegal migrants at our southern border just last month alone. Think about that. It's staggering. Okay, so let's just employ a little bit of common sense, just for a minute here. Considering these staggering numbers, Lord knows we could use a little common sense right now. More than 100,000 foreigners are illegally crossing our border within one 30-day stretch, and then they're disappearing into our country. None of this is good. It is not good. But you want to know what else is not good? This idea, perpetuated by the media and by the Democratic Party, that somehow we're in an all-or-nothing environment when it comes to immigration. You know, it shouldn't be that hard. Really shouldn't. I mean, step one, secure our border. Add a wall, add surveillance, add more border patrol. And step two, attack the laws in the books and reform them so that America makes it easy for foreigners who are good people, who are hardworking people that want to be American and aren't looking for handouts from American taxpayers to come here. We need them. We need immigrants. We want them. No one is disputing that. But if you listen to the Democrats, some of whom are disgustingly comparing the president's desire to secure our borders as akin to the Third Reich in Nazi Germany, yeah, nuts, right? We're going to tackle that later in the program. To listen to these Democrats, you'd think conservatives absolutely hated immigrants, which is a pathetic oversimplification and an unjust characterization, if you would, of this entire issue. Yes, there are bad people trying to infiltrate our country. The Dems need to recognize that, and they need to deal with that. And yes, there are wonderful people that want to be in our country for the right reasons, and we want them. To suggest that the administration's policies are anti-immigrant is nothing but political posturing. The president offering to make DACA people citizens. The Dems turned their back on that. Think about it. They turned their back. They walked away from that. Why? Because it doesn't serve them politically. I mean, why would they allow the Republicans to be credited with extending citizenship to millions? They have no intention of allowing that. No intention, because they want to hoard and save that entire group of voters to themselves. They want that group of voters to be dependent dependent on Democratic politicians for citizenship and for basic necessities. Let them in and keep them on a dependent, short leash. Yes, that's the economic and political agenda of so many Democrats right now. Sad, right? But here's the reality, and this is the future. I predict that if the Trump administration stays focused, this administration may be the first one to address immigration in a meaningful and positive way, a way that will matter for years to come. This president, Donald Trump, and the Republican Party might actually just be the first to lock down our borders while opening up America to the best, to the brightest, to the hardest working citizens from all over the world. It's high time we accomplish all of that, and we can.